The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital hummed overhead as Emma Bennett hurried down the pristine hallway, her sneakers squeaking softly against the polished floor. At 28, she had been a registered nurse for 6 years, but the weight of responsibility never got easier to carry. Today felt particularly heavy. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another text from Tyler, her 19-year-old brother. "Mom had another episode last night. When can you visit?" Emma's heart clenched. Their mother Linda's condition was deteriorating faster than anyone had anticipated, and the experimental treatment that could save her life came with a price tag that made Emma's modest salary look like pocket change. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't notice the tall figure rounding the corner until it was too late. The collision sent her patient files scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. "Watch where you're going," came a cold, clipped voice that could freeze water. Emma looked up to find herself staring into the most piercing gray eyes she'd ever seen. Dr. Gabriel Hayes stood before her, his 6-foot frame immaculate in his white coat, dark hair perfectly styled despite being 3 hours into his shift. He was the kind of handsome that belonged on magazine covers, but his expression held all the warmth of an Arctic winter. "I'm sorry, Dr. Hayes," Emma said, immediately dropping to her knees to gather the scattered papers. "I didn't see you." "Clearly." His voice dripped with disdain as he stepped around her, not offering to help. "Try to be more careful, nurse. Bennett, is it? Some of us have actual important work to do." Heat rose in Emma's cheeks, but she bit back her response. Everyone knew Dr. Gabriel Hayes was brilliant, the youngest chief of cardiothoracic surgery in the hospital's history, heir to the Hayes medical dynasty and completely untouchable. They also knew he was arrogant, cold, and treated most of the staff like they were beneath his notice. As Emma watched him disappear down the hallway, she couldn't shake the feeling that their paths would cross again. She just never imagined how dramatically that would change both their lives. 3 weeks later, Emma stood outside the ICU, watching through the glass as her mother slept peacefully for the first time in days. The preliminary tests had come back, and the news wasn't good. Without the experimental treatment, Linda had maybe 6 months. With it, she could have years. The treatment costs $300,000, the specialist had said matter-of-factly. Insurance won't cover it since it's still in trials. Emma had smiled and nodded, as if that amount wasn't more money than she'd see in 5 years of working double shifts. As if her world hadn't just crumbled around her. Rough night? Emma turned to find Dr. Gabriel Hayes standing beside her, still in his surgical scrubs. Up close, she noticed the exhaustion around his eyes, the way his usually perfect appearance showed signs of a long surgery. "My mother," Emma said simply, not trusting her voice to say more. Gabriel glanced through the window, his expression unreadable. "Linda Bennett. Cardiomyopathy. I reviewed her file." Emma's eyes widened. "You did?" "I review all cardiac cases in this hospital." His tone was clinical, detached. "The experimental treatment at Johns Hopkins could help her." "Could, if I had $300,000 lying around," Emma said with a bitter laugh. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. Emma fell into step beside him as they moved through the quiet corridors. The night shift had a different energy, softer, more intimate somehow. "You've been here 6 years, Gabriel said suddenly. "You know that." "I know everything about my hospital." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "You work double shifts, you've never called in sick, and you have a reputation for going above and beyond for patients." Emma frowned, unsure where this was going. "Thank you." "I have a proposition for you, Emma Bennett." The use of her first name caught her off guard. In the 3 weeks since their collision, he'd barely acknowledged her existence. "I need a wife." The words hung in the air between them like a physical thing. Emma stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "Excuse me?" Gabriel's expression didn't change. "The hospital board is concerned about my image. They think I'm too young, too unmarried, too focused on work to take over as chief of staff when my father retires next year. They want stability, family values." His lip curled slightly at the last words. "And you want me to, what exactly?" "Marry me. For 1 year. In return, I'll pay for your mother's treatment and provide you with a generous stipend." His gray eyes fixed on hers. It would be purely business, of course. No emotions, no complications. Emma felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "Are you insane?" "I'm practical. You need money, I need a wife. We can help each other." "I don't even like you," Emma blurted out, then immediately regretted the honesty. For the first time, Gabriel's lips twitched in what might have been almost a smile. "Good. That makes it easier. Emotions complicate everything." Emma's mind raced. $300,000. Her mother's life. 1 year of pretending to be married to the coldest man she'd ever met. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning. The board meeting is next week and I need an answer. Gabriel started to walk away, then paused. For what it's worth, Emma, you're the only person in this hospital who's ever had the courage to stand up to me. That's exactly what I need. As he disappeared around the corner, Emma slumped against the wall. What had she just gotten herself into? The courthouse wedding took place on a gray Thursday morning with all the romance of a business transaction. Emma wore a simple navy dress she'd bought on sale, while Gabriel looked imposing in a dark suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. The ceremony lasted exactly 12 minutes. You may kiss the bride, the judge announced with practiced enthusiasm. Gabriel leaned in, his lips brushing Emma's in the briefest possible contact. It was clinical, perfunctory, and yet Emma felt a strange flutter in her stomach that she immediately dismissed. Mrs. Hayes, Gabriel said as they signed the paperwork. Mrs. Hayes, Emma repeated, the name feeling foreign on her tongue. They drove to Gabriel's penthouse in silence, the city rolling past the windows of his Mercedes. Emma had never been in a car this expensive, and she tried not to touch anything, afraid she might break something worth more than her apartment rent. The penthouse was everything she'd expected and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, while the interior was decorated in shades of gray and white, beautiful, modern, and completely without warmth. Your room is down the hall, last door on the right, Gabriel said, loosening his tie. I've had some clothes delivered. We have dinner with the board tomorrow night, so you'll need to look the part. Emma nodded, feeling smaller with every word. What exactly does looking the part involve? Being seen and not heard, mostly. Smile, nod, let me do the talking. He poured himself a glass of what looked like very expensive whiskey. Oh, and Emma? In public we're blissfully happy. Newlywed bliss and all that. And in private? In private we stay out of each other's way. Emma picked up her single suitcase and made her way to what would be her room for the next year. It was larger than her entire previous apartment, with a king-sized bed, a walk-in closet, and its own bathroom. The clothes Gabriel had mentioned were laid out on the bed, designer dresses, shoes that cost more than she used to spend on groceries in a month. As she sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing her courthouse wedding dress, Emma couldn't help but wonder what she'd gotten herself into. She was married to a man who treated her like a business arrangement, living in a beautiful prison, all so her mother could live. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called, expecting to see Gabriel. Instead, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair entered, carrying a tray with tea and sandwiches. Mrs. Hayes? I'm Margaret, the housekeeper. I thought you might be hungry after your long day. Emma smiled gratefully. Thank you, Margaret. And please call me Emma. Margaret's face brightened. It's so nice to have some life in this place. Dr. Hayes works too much, barely eats. Maybe now he'll remember to be human once in a while. As Margaret left, Emma found herself wondering if there was more to Gabriel Hayes than the cold, arrogant facade he presented to the world. She quickly dismissed the thought. This was business, nothing more. But as she looked out at the city lights twinkling below, she couldn't shake the feeling that the next year would change everything. The first week of married life was an exercise in awkward avoidance. Gabriel left for the hospital before Emma woke up and returned long after she'd gone to bed. They communicated through notes left on the kitchen counter and the occasional terse text message. Emma threw herself into learning her new role, studying the hospital board members' backgrounds, practicing small talk in the mirror, and trying to figure out how to walk in heels that cost more than her old car was worth. The transformation was startling. The designer clothes fit her perfectly, and Margaret had helped her with makeup and hair styling that made her look like she belonged in Gabriel's world. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. It was Thursday morning when their careful avoidance system broke down. Emma was in the kitchen, making breakfast and humming softly to herself, when Gabriel walked in. He stopped short, clearly not expecting to find her there. I made extra, Emma said, gesturing to the plate of scrambled eggs and toast. If you want some. Gabriel stared at the domestic scene as if he'd never seen anything like it. I don't eat breakfast. Everyone should eat breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day. Emma slid a plate across the counter toward him. I don't have time. You have 5 minutes. Sit down, Dr. Hayes. Something in her tone made him comply, and Gabriel found himself sitting at his own kitchen counter, eating eggs that were perfectly seasoned and toast that was golden brown. These are good, he admitted reluctantly. My mother taught me to cook. She said food made with love always tastes better. Emma paused. Not that this was made with love, obviously. Just care, I guess. Gabriel looked at her curiously. How is she? Your mother? Better. The treatment is working. Emma's voice softened. She asked about you. Wants to meet her new son-in-law. That's not part of our arrangement. I know. I told her you're very busy. Emma began clearing the dishes. She said to tell you thank you, by the way, for giving her daughter a chance at happiness. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. She thinks this is real. She thinks love conquers all. Always has. Emma smiled sadly. It's a nice way to see the world. For a moment, something flickered in Gabriel's gray eyes, almost like loneliness. But it was gone so quickly Emma wondered if she'd imagined it. I have surgery at 7, Gabriel said, standing. The board dinner is tomorrow night. Can you be ready by 6? I'll be ready. As Gabriel headed for the door, he paused. Thank you for breakfast, Emma. It was the first time he'd used her name without it sounding like a clinical diagnosis, and Emma felt that strange flutter in her stomach again. The board dinner was held at the city's most exclusive restaurant, the kind of place where Emma would never have been able to afford even an appetizer. Gabriel had coached her in the car on the way over, names to remember, topics to avoid, and above all, to let him lead every conversation. Remember, he'd said as they pulled up to the valet, we're madly in love. Think you can manage that? I'll do my best, Emma replied, smoothing down her emerald green dress. The moment they walked into the restaurant, Gabriel transformed. His hand found the small of her back, his smile became warm and genuine, and he looked at her like she was the most fascinating woman in the room. Emma, darling, he said as they approached the table full of distinguished-looking men and women, I'd like you to meet the board of directors. What followed was a masterclass in performance. Gabriel was charming, attentive, and completely believable as a man in love. He held Emma's chair, remembered how she liked her wine, and told amusing stories about their courtship that were so convincing Emma almost believed them herself. How did you know Gabriel was the one? Asked Mrs. Richardson, the board chairwoman, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s. Emma felt Gabriel tense beside her, but she smiled serenely. He saved my mother's life. Not just medically, but he gave me hope when I had none left. How do you not fall in love with someone who gives you your family back? The table collectively sighed at the romantic sentiment, and Emma felt Gabriel's hand squeeze hers under the table. And Gabriel, Dr. Patel asked with a knowing smile, what made you decide it was time to settle down? Gabriel's answer surprised Emma. Emma reminded me that there's more to life than just existing. She made me want to actually live. His gray eyes met hers across the table. She makes me want to be better than I am. The sincerity in his voice was so convincing that Emma felt her heart skip a beat. She had to remind herself it was all an act. The dinner was a resounding success. As they said their goodbyes, Mrs. Richardson pulled Gabriel aside. She's lovely, Gabriel. And more importantly, she's genuine. The board is very pleased. In the car on the way home, Emma kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. Well? Gabriel asked. I think we pulled it off. Mrs. Richardson seemed convinced. You did well tonight. Better than well, actually. Emma looked at him in surprise. Was that a compliment, Dr. Hayes? Gabriel. When we're alone, you can call me Gabriel. The use of his first name felt strangely intimate in the quiet car. Gabriel, Emma repeated softly. They drove the rest of the way in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. As they rode the elevator up to the penthouse, Gabriel turned to Emma. That thing you said about hope, was that part of the act? Emma met his gaze steadily. No, that part was real. Something shifted between them in that moment, though neither could quite name what it was. Over the following weeks, Gabriel and Emma fell into a strange sort of routine. They had breakfast together most mornings, Emma sharing stories about her patients while Gabriel listened with what seemed like genuine interest. Their evening conversations grew longer, moving from polite small talk to actual discussions about medicine, life, and everything in between. Emma began to see glimpses of the man behind Gabriel's cold facade. She noticed how he stayed late to check on difficult cases, how he remembered the names of all the hospital's support staff, and how his jaw tightened whenever someone mentioned his father, Dr. Richard Hayes. Tell me about him, Emma said one evening as they shared a bottle of wine on the penthouse balcony. My father? Gabriel's voice immediately grew colder. What do you want to know? Why you don't get along? Gabriel was quiet for so long Emma thought he wouldn't answer. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. My mother died when I was 12. Heart failure that could have been prevented if she'd received proper care earlier. He took a sip of wine, his knuckles white around the glass. My father was so busy building his medical empire that he missed the signs. When she collapsed, he was in surgery, elective surgery that could have waited. Emma's heart ached for the 12-year-old boy who'd lost his mother. Gabriel, I'm so sorry. He remarried within a year. Victoria, his current wife, who made it very clear that I was an inconvenience in their perfect new life. Gabriel's laugh was bitter. She shipped me off to boarding school as soon as she could manage it. Is that why you became a surgeon? For your mother? I became a surgeon so I'd never make the same mistakes my father did. Every patient matters, Emma. Every single one. Emma understood now why Gabriel worked such long hours, why he was so demanding of himself and others. It wasn't arrogance, it was guilt and grief that he'd carried for 20 years. She would be proud of you, Emma said softly. Your mother. You've saved so many lives. Gabriel looked at her then, really looked at her, and Emma saw something vulnerable and raw in his gray eyes. How do you do that? He asked quietly. Do what? Make everything seem less heavy? Emma smiled. Maybe because I've learned that carrying all that weight alone just breaks your back. Sometimes you have to let other people help. Gabriel reached over and touched her hand just briefly, but the warmth of his fingers sent electricity up Emma's arm. Thank you, he said simply. As they sat together under the stars, Emma realized she was in serious trouble. Somewhere along the way she'd started to care about Gabriel Hayes, really care about him. And that definitely wasn't part of their arrangement. Emma was reviewing patient charts in the hospital break room when a woman she'd never seen before approached her table. She was stunning, tall, blonde, with the kind of effortless elegance that came from a lifetime of privilege. You must be Emma, the woman said, her smile not quite reaching her crystal blue eyes. I'm Victoria Ashford, Gabriel's friend. Something in the way she said friend made Emma's stomach knot. It's nice to meet you. I heard Gabriel got married. Quite suddenly. Victoria's gaze swept over Emma appraisingly. I have to admit I was surprised. You're not exactly his usual type. And what is his usual type? Emma asked, keeping her voice carefully neutral. Someone from his world. Someone who understands the demands of his position, his family's expectations. Victoria sat down uninvited. Someone like me, actually. We were engaged, 2 years ago. Emma's heart dropped into her stomach, but she kept her expression calm. Gabriel mentioned you. Did he tell you why we broke up? Victoria leaned forward conspiratorially. I called off the engagement because I knew he wasn't ready to commit. Gabriel has always been married to his work first. I thought if I gave him time, he'd come around. But he didn't, Emma pointed out. Victoria's smile sharpened. No, instead he married a nurse he barely knew. Which, frankly, doesn't make much sense unless... She paused dramatically. Unless it's not a real marriage at all. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Gabriel needs a wife for the board position and you need... Well, I imagine you need something too. Money, perhaps? I heard about your mother's condition. Emma stood abruptly. I think this conversation is over. Emma, wait. Victoria's voice stopped her. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to help you understand what you're dealing with. Gabriel doesn't let people in. He never has, not since his mother died. Whatever you think this marriage is becoming, you're fooling yourself. As Victoria walked away, Emma sank back into her chair, her hands shaking. The worst part wasn't the woman's cruel words, it was the tiny voice in Emma's head that wondered if Victoria might be right. That evening, Gabriel found Emma unusually quiet during dinner. Everything all right? He asked. Emma looked up from her barely touched plate. I met Victoria Ashford today. Gabriel's fork paused halfway to his mouth. What did she want? To warn me, apparently. About what I was getting myself into. Emma studied his face. You didn't tell me you were engaged to her. It didn't seem relevant. Gabriel's voice had gone cold again, the walls slamming back into place. Not relevant? Gabriel, she was going to be your wife. And now you are. Gabriel stood abruptly. This is exactly the kind of complication I was trying to avoid. What kind of complication? Having an honest conversation with my husband? We're not really married, Emma? Gabriel's voice rose. This is a business arrangement. Nothing more. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. For weeks, she'd been fooling herself into thinking they were building something real. But Gabriel's cold dismissal reminded her exactly what this was, a transaction. You're right, Emma said quietly, standing from the table. How silly of me to forget. As she walked to her room, Emma heard Gabriel call her name, but she didn't turn back. She couldn't let him see the tears that were already falling. 3 days passed in tense silence. Gabriel left earlier and came home later, and Emma made sure to be asleep or pretending to be, by the time he returned. They were back to communicating through notes and avoiding each other in their own home. Emma was working a double shift in the cardiac unit when the emergency alarms started blaring. A multi-car accident had brought in several critical patients, and all hands were needed. She was prepping one of the trauma rooms when she heard Dr. Martinez, one of the emergency physicians, shouting orders. Where's Dr. Hayes? We need him now. He's in surgery, someone called back. Won't be out for another hour. This patient can't wait an hour. We're losing him. Emma looked through the window and saw the patient on the gurney, a man about Gabriel's age, chest trauma, blood everywhere. Her training kicked in and she moved without thinking. What do you need? She asked Dr. Martinez. Someone who can assist with an emergency thoracotomy. I need to get into his chest cavity, but I need experienced hands. Emma had assisted Gabriel with dozens of similar procedures. Her hands were steady, her knowledge solid. I can do it. Emma, you're not a surgeon. But I know this procedure better than anyone except Gabriel. Let me help. Dr. Martinez looked at the monitor, saw the patient's vitals crashing and made the decision. Scrub in. Now. The next hour was a blur of precise movements, steady hands and intense concentration. Emma anticipated every instrument Dr. Martinez needed, helped him navigate the complex repair of the patient's damaged heart, and never wavered even when things got dicey. When Gabriel finally arrived, having been pulled from his own surgery, he found Emma and Dr. Martinez closing up the patient's chest. What the hell is going on here? Gabriel demanded. Dr. Hayes? Dr. Martinez looked up, surprised. Emma saved this man's life. I couldn't have done it without her. Gabriel's eyes found Emma across the operating table. Her scrubs were blood-stained, her hair escaping from her surgical cap, but her hands were rock steady as she helped with the final sutures. His vitals are stabilizing, the anesthesiologist announced. He's going to make it. As the patient was wheeled to recovery, Gabriel cornered Emma in the scrub room. What were you thinking? He demanded, but his voice lacked its usual bite. I was thinking about saving someone's life, Emma replied, stripping off her gloves. Just like you taught me. I never taught you. Yes, you did. Emma turned to face him. Every morning when you talk about your surgeries, every time you explain a procedure to me over dinner, every story you tell about why this work matters, you've been teaching me. Gabriel stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Emma? Dr. Hayes? Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway. The patient's family wants to thank whoever assisted. They said Emma was incredible in there. After Dr. Martinez left, Gabriel and Emma stood in the quiet scrub room, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. I was terrified, Gabriel admitted quietly. Of the surgery? Of losing you. Gabriel's gray eyes met hers. When I heard you were in that or that you'd put yourself at risk, I've never been so scared in my life. Emma's breath caught. Gabriel? I know what I said the other night, about this being just business. I was lying. Gabriel stepped closer. I was lying to you and I was lying to myself. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere along the way, this stopped being pretend for me. Gabriel's voice was rough with emotion. I'm saying I've fallen in love with my wife, and I have no idea what to do about it. Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. Gabriel, Before she could finish, Gabriel's lips were on hers, and this kiss was nothing like their wedding kiss. This was desperate, real, filled with months of suppressed longing and the terror of almost losing each other. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I love you too, Emma whispered against his lips. I've been trying not to, but I love you too. Gabriel rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. What does this mean for us? I don't know, Emma admitted, but maybe we can figure it out together. The weeks following their confession in the scrub room brought a transformation to Gabriel and Emma's relationship. The careful distance they'd maintained crumbled, replaced by tentative but genuine intimacy. Gabriel began coming home for lunch, claiming he wanted to check on Emma after her heroic surgery, as the hospital gossips had dubbed it. Emma started staying up to wait for him after his long surgeries, sharing late dinners and quiet conversations that stretched into the early morning hours. The board is meeting next week, Gabriel mentioned one evening as they cooked dinner together, A new ritual that had become Emma's favorite part of the day. About the chief of staff position? Emma asked, stirring the pasta sauce. Among other things. Mrs. Richardson wants to meet with us beforehand. She's quite taken with you, apparently. Emma felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. What if they figure out how this all started? Gabriel moved behind her, his hand settling on her waist as he leaned down to kiss her neck. Then we tell them the truth, that we married for practical reasons and fell in love despite ourselves. Is that what happened? Emma asked, leaning back against his chest. Isn't it? Gabriel turned her in his arms. I married you because you were convenient, safe, someone who wouldn't complicate my carefully controlled life. Instead, you turned everything upside down. I'm sorry? Emma said with a teasing smile. Don't be. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. Their peaceful bubble was interrupted by Gabriel's phone ringing. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's the hospital. I should take this. He answered with his usual professional tone. Dr. Hayes. Emma watched his expression change as he listened, his face growing pale. I'll be right there, he said, already reaching for his keys. Emma, there's been an accident. Multiple casualties coming in, including... He paused, his voice catching. Including your brother Tyler. Emma's world tilted. What? He's stable, but he needs surgery. I have to go. I'm coming with you. Emma, you don't have to. He's my brother, Gabriel. I'm coming. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of city lights and Emma's frantic prayers. Gabriel held her hand whenever he wasn't shifting gears, his thumb stroking over her knuckles in a steady, comforting rhythm. At the hospital, they were met by Dr. Martinez, who quickly briefed them on Tyler's condition, internal bleeding that required immediate surgery. I want to operate, Gabriel said immediately. Gabriel, no, Emma interrupted. He's family. You can't operate on family. He's not technically family. Yes, he is. Emma's voice was firm. He's my brother, which makes him your brother. You taught me that surgeons can't operate on people they love because their judgment gets compromised. Gabriel stared at her, and Emma could see the internal battle playing out across his face. Finally, he nodded. Dr. Martinez will perform the surgery. I'll assist if needed. He cupped Emma's face in his hands. Tyler's going to be fine. I promise. The surgery took 3 hours. Emma paced the waiting room, unable to sit still, while Gabriel sat quietly nearby, ready to offer comfort whenever she needed it. When Dr. Martinez finally appeared, still in his scrubs, both Gabriel and Emma jumped to their feet. He's going to be fine, Dr. Martinez announced with a smile. The surgery went perfectly. He should make a full recovery. Emma collapsed into Gabriel's arms, sobbing with relief. Gabriel held her tightly, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Can I see him? Emma asked. He's still sedated, but yes. Just for a few minutes. Tyler looked so young lying in the hospital bed, pale and hooked up to various monitors. Emma took his hand carefully, mindful of the four. Hey, little brother, she whispered. You scared me. Gabriel stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder. He's strong. Just like his sister. Emma looked up at him. Thank you. For being here, for making sure he had the best care. You don't need to thank me, Emma. This is what families do for each other. The word family hung in the air between them, weighted with new meaning. Emma was sitting beside Tyler's hospital bed, reading to him while he recovered, when an imposing man in an expensive suit walked into the room. She recognized him immediately from the photos in Gabriel's office. Dr. Richard Hayes, Gabriel's father. You must be the nurse my son married, Richard said, his tone making nurse sound like an insult. Emma stood, squaring her shoulders. I'm Emma Hayes, Gabriel's wife. Yes, I heard about this arrangement. Richard's cold blue eyes swept over Tyler. And this would be your family, I assume? This is my brother Tyler. Richard examined Tyler's chart with a practiced eye. Motorcycle accident. Reckless behavior. I suppose it runs in families. Emma felt her temper flare. Excuse me? Oh, don't misunderstand me. I'm sure you're a perfectly adequate nurse. But let's not pretend this marriage is anything more than a convenient transaction for both parties. You don't know anything about our marriage. Richard laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. My dear girl, I know exactly what this is. Gabriel needs a wife to secure the chief of staff position, and you need money for your family's medical bills. It's actually quite clever in a mercenary sort of way. That's not. Please. Do you really think Gabriel is capable of love? He's exactly like me, brilliant, ambitious, and completely incapable of genuine emotional attachment. He learned that lesson early when he watched love destroy his mother. Emma's hands clenched into fists. Gabriel is nothing like you. Isn't he? Cold, controlling, married to his work above all else. Richard stepped closer. How long do you think it will be before he grows tired of playing house? Before the novelty of having a pretty little wife wears off and he realizes you're holding him back from his true potential? Before Emma could respond, Gabriel's voice cut through the room like a blade. That's enough. Both Emma and Richard turned to see Gabriel standing in the doorway, his face a mask of fury Emma had never seen before. Gabriel, Richard said smoothly, I was just getting acquainted with your wife. Get out. Gabriel's voice was deadly quiet. Now, son. I said get out. Now. Gabriel stepped into the room, moving to stand beside Emma. And if I ever hear you speak to my wife like that again, you'll regret it. Richard's eyebrows rose. My. Perhaps this little arrangement is more complicated than I thought. There's no arrangement, Gabriel said firmly. Emma is my wife. In every sense of the word. And if you can't respect that, then you're not welcome in our lives. Father and son stared at each other for a long moment, 20 years of resentment crackling between them. Finally, Richard smiled coldly. We'll see how long this lasts, he said, then walked out without another word. Gabriel immediately turned to Emma, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Are you okay? What did he say to you? Nothing that matters, Emma said, but Gabriel could see she was shaken. Emma, tell me. She looked up at him, seeing the concern and love in his gray eyes. He said you were incapable of love. That this was all just a transaction and you'd get tired of me eventually. Gabriel's jaw tightened. And what did you say? I said you were nothing like him. Emma touched his cheek softly. Because you're not, Gabriel. You're the most caring man I've ever known. Gabriel pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. I'm sorry. I should have warned you about him, should have protected you from. Gabriel. Emma pulled back to look at him. You did protect me. You chose me over him. That means everything. Tyler stirred in his bed, his eyes fluttering open. Emma? Hey, sleepyhead, Emma said, immediately moving to his side. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. Tyler's gaze moved to Gabriel. You must be the famous husband I keep hearing about. Gabriel stepped forward, extending his hand. Gabriel Hayes. It's nice to finally meet you, Tyler. Tyler shook his hand, studying Gabriel's face. Thank you for taking care of my sister. And for making sure I had the best doctors. Your family now, Gabriel said simply. That's what family does. Tyler's eyes widened slightly at the sincerity in Gabriel's voice, then he smiled. I can see why Emma fell for you. The board meeting was held in the hospital's most formal conference room, its mahogany table gleaming under the chandelier. Emma sat beside Gabriel, wearing the navy suit they'd chosen together, her hand steady in his as they waited for the decision that would shape their future. Mrs. Richardson stood at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. Dr. Hayes, in the past year, we've seen remarkable changes in your leadership style, your interaction with staff, and your overall approach to medicine. The board has been particularly impressed with your wife's involvement in hospital activities and her heroic actions during the emergency surgery last month. Gabriel squeezed Emma's hand. However, Mrs. Richardson continued, we've also received some concerning information about the nature of your marriage. Emma felt her blood run cold. Gabriel's father. Dr. Richard Hayes contacted several board members with allegations that your marriage was arranged purely for professional advancement. Gabriel stood, his voice calm but firm. Mrs. Richardson, with all due respect, my father has been absent from my life for most of the past 20 years. He knows nothing about my marriage or my relationship with Emma. Nevertheless, these are serious accusations. Then let me address them directly. Gabriel's voice carried through the room. Yes, Emma and I married quickly. Yes, I knew that having a wife would help my chances of securing this position. But if you want to know about the nature of our marriage, look at the facts. Gabriel turned slightly to include Emma in his gaze. Look at how Emma has thrown herself into hospital volunteer work. Look at how she saved a man's life when she could have stayed safely on the sidelines. Look at how she's made me a better doctor, a better leader, and a better man. Mrs. Richardson raised an eyebrow. And what would you say to accusations that this marriage is temporary? A business arrangement with an expiration date? Emma stood beside Gabriel, her voice clear and strong. I would say that love doesn't follow a timeline or a contract. Gabriel and I may have married for practical reasons, but what we've built together is real. And if you can't see that, then maybe this isn't the right hospital for us after all." The room fell silent. Gabriel looked at Emma with such pride and love that several board members exchanged meaningful glances. Dr. Patel cleared his throat. "If I may, I've worked with Gabriel for 15 years. I've never seen him as engaged, as human as he's been this past year. Whatever brought them together, it's clear that Dr. and Mrs. Hayes have built something genuine and lasting." Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Mrs. Richardson smiled for the first time all evening. "Dr. Hayes, it is the unanimous decision of this board to name you Chief of Staff of St. Mary's Hospital, effective immediately." The room erupted in applause. Gabriel turned to Emma, swept her into his arms, and kissed her thoroughly, not caring who was watching. "Congratulations, Chief Hayes," Emma whispered against his lips. "Congratulations, Mrs. Hayes," he replied. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Gabriel's office, now much more warmly decorated thanks to Emma's influence. Photos of their family, including Tyler and Emma's mother Linda, sat on his desk alongside his medical journals. Emma knocked on the door, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Got a minute for your wife?" she asked with a smile. "I've always got time for you," Gabriel said, pulling her down for a kiss as she handed him his coffee. "How's the Hopkins consultation going?" Emma asked, curling up in the chair across from his desk. "They want me to head up their new cardiac program. It's an incredible opportunity." Emma felt her stomach drop. "In Baltimore?" "Emma?" Gabriel set down his coffee and moved to kneel beside her chair. "I told them no." "What?" "Gabriel, that's your dream job." "No," Gabriel said firmly, taking her hands. "My dream is right here. This hospital, this life, you. I'm not going anywhere." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "But." "No buts. I spent 32 years of my life thinking success meant climbing higher, achieving more, proving I was better than my father. But you taught me that success is having something worth staying for." Emma leaned down to kiss him, tasting the salt of her own happy tears. "Besides," Gabriel said with a grin, "I hear the Chief of Staff position comes with excellent benefits, including a wife who makes the best breakfast in the city." "Just breakfast?" Emma teased. "Among other things," Gabriel said, his voice dropping to that husky tone that still made Emma's knees weak. Their moment was interrupted by a knock on the door. Margaret peeked in, beaming. "Dr. Hayes? Mrs. Hayes? I'm sorry to interrupt, but Tyler is here with some news he says can't wait." Tyler burst through the door, practically vibrating with excitement. "Emma." "Gabriel. I got in." "Got in where?" Emma asked, standing to hug her brother. "Medical school. Johns Hopkins pre-med program." Tyler's grin was infectious. "I know it's crazy, but watching you two, seeing what you do here, I want to be a doctor too." Emma looked at Gabriel, who was smiling proudly at Tyler. "What do you think, Dr. Hayes? Room for another Hayes in the medical field?" "I think," Gabriel said, pulling Emma close and ruffling Tyler's hair, "this family is just getting started." The hospital's annual charity gala was in full swing, but Emma barely noticed the elegant decorations or the orchestra playing in the corner. She was too busy watching Gabriel work the room, charming donors and colleagues alike with the warmth and humor that had taken her months to discover beneath his cold exterior. "He's really something, isn't he?" Emma turned to find Mrs. Richardson beside her, following her gaze to Gabriel. "He really is," Emma agreed. "Sometimes I can't believe this is my life." "Believe it, dear. You two were made for each other." Mrs. Richardson paused. "I have to admit, when I first heard about your marriage, I had my doubts. But seeing you together now, well, let's just say the hospital board has never been happier with a decision." As if summoned by their conversation, Gabriel appeared at Emma's side, sliding his arm around her waist. "Ladies, I hope you're not sharing embarrassing stories about me," he said with a smile. "Only the good ones," Mrs. Richardson replied with a wink before moving away to greet other guests. Gabriel turned to Emma, his gray eyes soft with love. "Having fun?" "Always when I'm with you." Emma straightened his tie unnecessarily just because she liked touching him. Tyler texted. "He aced his organic chemistry exam." "Of course he did. He's got Hayes genes now," Gabriel said with mock arrogance. "Is that what we're calling it?" Emma laughed. Gabriel's expression grew serious as he took her hands. "Emma, there's something I want to ask you." Emma's breath caught. They'd been married for 2 years, truly married in every sense that mattered, but Gabriel had never officially proposed. Their original courthouse wedding had been for practical reasons, not love. Gabriel dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the charity gala, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. The orchestra seemed to sense the moment, shifting to a softer, more romantic melody. "Emma Bennett Hayes," Gabriel said, his voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet ballroom. "2 years ago, I asked you to marry me for all the wrong reasons. Tonight, I'm asking you to marry me again for the only reason that matters." Emma's eyes filled with tears as Gabriel opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that caught the ballroom lights like captured stars. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. You've made me believe in forever, in family, in the kind of love that actually can conquer all." Gabriel's voice was steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Will you marry me again, Emma? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you how much you mean to me?" Emma dropped to her knees in front of him, not caring about her expensive dress or the hundreds of people watching. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Gabriel Hayes, I'll marry you again and again as many times as you want." The ballroom erupted in applause as Gabriel slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her thoroughly. Through her happy tears, Emma could see their friends and colleagues cheering, could hear Tyler whistling from somewhere in the crowd, could feel the warmth of a love she'd never expected to find. As they broke apart, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Mrs. Hayes," he murmured. "I love you too, Dr. Hayes," she replied. "Forever and always." Later, as they swayed together on the dance floor, Emma marveled at the journey that had brought them here. She'd married the coldest, most arrogant doctor in the hospital, expecting nothing more than a business arrangement. Instead, she'd found her soulmate, her partner, her home. "What are you thinking about?" Gabriel asked, spinning her gently. Emma smiled up at him, her heart full to overflowing. "Just wondering what I did to get so lucky." "Emma," Gabriel said, his voice full of the wonder that still surprised him every day, "I'm the lucky one. You didn't just save your mother's life with our arrangement. You saved mine too." As the music played and the stars twinkled through the ballroom windows, Gabriel and Emma Hayes danced together, surrounded by love and the promise of all the tomorrows yet to come. And if their story had taught them anything, it was that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings could lead to the most beautiful endings of all.